So after the Celtic Tiger, we said, really, we've got to start looking, while we were managing the private sector, now we've got to start looking at the public space, i.e. the carpet of the town, i.e. the spaces between all the buildings, our town being a room. And this was Bridge Street. And car was king. Very severe surfaces, and so at the time it was very popular to completely pedestrianise streets in the UK and Europe, and we thought, should we do this? And so we had a whole lot of meetings and discussions, and we decided we would do a trial pedestrianisation to close down the street on a June bank holiday for 4 days. And so that's what we did. As part of the consultation process, people felt it might be nice to put trees on the street. So we went down to our local sewage treatment plant, which was being built at the time, and we borrowed a load of big sewer pipes, painted them North Italian terracotta red, flipped them on the side, and with 2 forklifts in the morning, whizzed them out down the streetscape at 6:30 in the morning for trees on both sides. And we blocked it off top and bottom. So with no cars, spill out from the shops, immediate transformation. People were coming out dining with wine and cappuccinos, and the streetscape was softened. It was a very positive experience. But the one big drawback we had was 1 hour traffic jams and all the approach roads. So we knew complete pedestrianisation would work. And but if we didn't try that out, we wouldn't have discovered this. And I love this slide. It's a real Celtic Tiger slide. You have a sleeveless fur coat. What's a nice touch? And you have red and white wine. They were the days. But so we had these back traffic jams and all the approach roads. So the resulting plan really was to try and restructure the car parking, reduce the amount of car parking spaces, bring in trees and slow the traffic down. And that's it in plan. And this is it in reality. Just go back. In the middle of the town, we felt the trees were very positive, so we planted them with semi-matures, like marching Roman sentinels and pairs marching up the streetscape, giving a sense of architectural structure to the street. And because a long linear street, it had no heart. So in the centre, we put a very wide pedestrian crossing surrounded by 4 trees to give the street, this long linear space, a little bit of a heart. And restructured all the car parking and actually marked them out in lines which they weren't done before. So you actually start getting more cars per square footage. And there's the street, there's the main crossing now. And you can see when we do our planning permission, we try and encourage people to put a lot of doors in the front of their premises. So in the summertime, the shop opens up onto the streetscape. And in the wintertime, you can close down the 2 side doors and just open up the middle one. And this is the benefit. When you take away 1 car parking space, look what you get. You get a tree to soften the streetscape. You get artisans coming out selling jewellery. You get families pulling in with buggies. The positivity we get when you take 1 car out of the town centre, put it somewhere else, but not very far away, but in an appropriate place. Look what happens when you take 5 and 6 car parking spaces out. You get a tree, you get seating, you get bike stands, and you get people starting to enjoy themselves. And you have a more popular town, more desirable place to be, which ironically attracts more cars, ultimately as well. But it's all down to how to manage them. The trees, when this photo was taken, that tree and the bay was just constructed 4 weeks. It was just finished. We used to, when I started in local authority, we used to buy a tree guard for 300 punts at the time. And we had a small tree and the trunk to the girth of an old 50 pence piece. And the problem was that the drunk coming out of the pub with his hands through and snaps it. So casual vandals were destroying a lot. So what we do now is we buy a tree with a girth greater than the width of a coffee mug. And it's about €500. But we've no tree guard to buy. And we've removed 95% of our vandals, being the casual vandal, just coming out, you can't break it. So your vandalism down by 95%. The vindictive guy, who's the other 5%, if he wants to, will get a chainsaw and go through your tree. So you can never stop those guys, but you can reduce it significantly. New housing in the streetscape. This is brand new housing, tried to make them tie in as a conservation measure in the architectural conservation area. We have a series of houses with narrow plots, sliding sash windows, limestone sills, natural slate roof. We missed out the chimneys on those. And but again, repairing the streetscape from what was a 1960s plumbing depot. We put the plumber with his big depot out in the industrial estate outside town. So it took a lot of big artics and deliveries right out of the town centre as well. And you get residential back. So there's a lot of little things, all the little things, the windows, the paint, the wiring, all that sort of stuff. And, what I meant to say is the undergrounding, the overhead wires. We've undergrounded about 95% of the streets over the last 20 years. So there's very little wires crisscrossing the street. So Three slides here of our main civic space, the Octagon. 3 centuries. So this is the Octagon in the 19th century. Very pedestrian friendly, no cars, need your Wellingtons to wade across the muck though from one side to the other. It was almost social utopia. It was very family orientated. Every street had its own football team. Every street had its own bonfire in St. John's night. You do St. John's? But it's like Halloween. But every street had its own bonfire. And everyone lived above the premises they lived in below. So it was very secure. It was a very good place to live up and to grow and to do business. It was a very wholesome way of life. And then we look at the next century. Emigration, people leaving, buildings being boarded up. The advent of rural electrification, wires crisscrossing the street. Window fenestration patterns starting to change in buildings. And the biggest social intrusion into any town, large or small in Ireland, into the public ground space is the advent of the motor car. And the car has become king, and the entire space has been given to a black sea tarmac for cars. It's a Renault 16, is it? Renault 16? 12. Did you have one?
Not mine.
I'm sure it was very fancy back then. And this is it today, the exact same space. So you're looking at colour schemes, bringing residential people back into the town core, passive surveillance from the upper areas, undergrounding of all the overhead wires, planting of trees, softening the streetscape, and the judicious discrimination against the motor car into narrow circulation routes. So you start giving wide areas to pedestrians in the town centre, and it makes your place to be, to holiday, and to want to live. The key thing is to make your town a place that people want to live in, because if people want to live in it, people also want to holiday. And so that gives you the collective contribution that all those little things make over a time period. Well, independently, people say, gosh, why are you doing this? But after a while, with the collective, it makes a very, very positive contribution to your town, and it increases the stand on a national level. It's again more of our French partners from Limoges. Responsible citizenship, which is a coin that David Cameron uses quite a lot. Voluntary groups, they should be very desirable to join. The Tidy Towns voluntary organisation in Westport, I think, is more desirable than the golf club. That's the way we want it. Everyone in the various residential areas, most families have a member in the Tidy Towns. They don't have to come to all the meetings, but they just get their rota for pickup. And this is one of 16 groups on the Good Friday clean-up. And there's 97 voluntary organisations in Westport. We had to catalogue at one stage for a pride of place competition, but the Tidy Towns is the biggest. And the Tidy Towns alone contributed over 5,000 voluntary hours in 2013 and about 7,000 voluntary hours to the town in 2014. So they're serious movers and shakers in terms of putting the town up where it should be. That's one of the groups. So that was the longest section. These are much shorter, I'm glad to know. So the National Smarter Travel. We are a smarter travel town. For many years, engineers in Ireland and the UK and the continent have been building more and more roads to cope with cars. And what they've discovered after 50 or 60 years, that the more roads you build, the more motorways you build, the more cars that come out. So there's a small group of people within the Department of Transport, that called an enlightened group within the Department of Transport, and they were offering funding for towns to come forward with suggestions of, instead of spending money on roads, they would give funding for towns to come up with alternative modes of transport, infrastructure, like cycling, car sharing, public transport, all that sort of stuff, and they call it smart travel. And there was a competition that's throughout nationally. Westport, we got a pitch in for it, and we were shortlisted from about 50 applicants down to 11. And for the 11, they gave us all 50 grand, the 11 towns. Or they could be not only towns, you could be urban centres within the city, like the district of Grimland in Dublin. And they gave us 50 grand each to work up for the final bid, and we came through as the winners. There was 3 winning towns: Dungarvan, Limerick City, and Westport. So we won funding of 5 million, which we're going to spend over the 5 years. It's building a lot of our greenway infrastructure, and it's been a very positive experience for us over the last 5 years, and it's given us a lot of work. But it's really improved the quality of life for people in the town centre. These are all the new links and greenways and walkways you have in the town centre. Essentially, to date, we've linked about 70% of our residential areas, independently of the road network, with greenways. So if you're a child in one residential area, you want to go and visit your friend and safe, you can cycle independently in the car, you can walk, skateboard, whatever way you want. So in terms of travel, it's cutting out the amount of car journeys we have, but it's also contributing positively to the health of people. They're becoming social recreational routaries in the evening as well. So it's making a very positive mental statement for the town also. Some of the schools along the Greenway here, this is the Key School, they had a 1% amount of kids cycling before the Greenway was built, and now they're up to about 15%. You can never get all the kids because a lot of them come in from the rural hinterland 4 or 5 miles out, but the parents drop the kids on the edge of town and they walk the rest of the way on the Greenway, especially on Wednesdays for WOW Day, WOW, which is Westport, WWW, Westport walks on Wednesdays. And you can see the kids from school going up and down the Greenway there. We put in a lot of infrastructure for calming traffic in the town centre. Some of those works are complete now, and that's a proposal for the town centre, just really changing the surface type and really calming the traffic down so you can share the surface with cyclists and pedestrians. We couldn't really put cycle routeways in the historic urban core because the streets weren't wide enough. So we put in infrastructure to slow the traffic down, so it's a shared surface philosophy. But once you get outside the historic town core, we can depend on greenway routeways. Some of the work's happening at the time. This wasn't complete at that time. It's in front of Lord Altamont townhouse, which was the tourist office then. And as part of it, as part of our PR campaign, we designed the bicycle stands there in the shape of a mountain bike saying Westport Smarter Travel. And they were quite expensive per unit. And should we put the spend on? We went ahead with them anyway. They're over 1,000 apiece per unit. But in terms of PR, it's been fabulous. You get guys coming out to the pub and the hen party, and then there'll be 15 sitting on the bike. But it's travelling all around Facebook, and it says Westport on it. You wear yourselves positivity of and we built a lot of bike shelters around the town centre, and we've also put in bike lockers. So you can rent a bike locker, you should put your bicycle in the locker itself for an inexpensive amount during the year. And this is Smarter Travel, bus or car. There's an American guy giving a talk. I got these 2 slides off from via a lady from Antashka. And this shows you the amount of people it needs for one person driving a car to come into town for all these people. And look what happens when they all use the bus. And what's even more interesting is the next slide. This is the space needed for a car with one person in the town centre. That's how much space they're taking up. So, you know, your town is full of cars. God, we're really busy. It's fantastic. How busy are you? And look at all the space between these people. That space could be sweating a lot harder for you and doing much more positive things for your town instead of holding hollow boxes of metal and rubber tires going around the place. Especially the ones in the historic town core, your choice places in the town centre. Some of our public realm works, which are funded by Smarter Travel down at the Quay. All our Celtic Tiger sort of holiday developments down along the Quay there, the pavement was only 3 foot wide. We felt it was underperforming, it wasn't nice. Public realm space, we should really pull up our socks and start making it a positive public space. So what we did is, on the right hand side, there was a big green area. We took a 5 metre strip off that, moved the road across and widened the pavement to 5 metres. This is before and after. And it's a very large scheme, a lot of pedestrian crossings in it again, giving the hierarchy of importance to pedestrians and bicycles as opposed to traffic, just slowing the traffic down completely. And you can see some of our crossings there. And it kind of pushes a gap in the car parking so you have a visual from the shops across to the ocean. So you come out, you're not met by a curtain of cars, because you see the ocean. And it starts, these are very early shots now, but it's very well used during the summer, and people start bringing in chairs and tables and all sorts of stuff. In fact, it's such a big scheme, here we can see it from the air, but it was $750,000. But that's it there, running all the way along on the crossings. And essentially we took a 5 metre strip of the green area, transferred it across the other side of the road. And it's made no end of difference to the area down there. Units that were never left before started to let and started open. So it's a very, very positive experience for us. But again, a lot of talking and convincing people to be okay, because it's a huge infrastructure project. Oh, that's just Donegal. They did a similar thing. Main civic space in Donegal, 1960. Look at it today. Again, a great public space in the town centre. They grasped the nettle back in the 80s, and they pedestrianised the main part of their town centre. As part of our Smarter Travel Pack, our Smarter Travel spend, well, it's mainly two-dimensional because it's routeways, circulation spaces, but we will build a Smarter Travel Pavilion at the very end, which will house bicycles, give information, different types of travel, toilets, and showers. So if you work in town, you don't want to cycle, you know, shower, you can shower here, leave your bike here and go to work. And there's also lockers then for tourists coming off the train. They can store their bags there for a few hours or a few days, and they're safe while they're all cycling up to Mulranny or wherever. As well as the town centre greenways, we built the Great Western Greenway, which goes from Westport to Achill Island. It's about 50 kilometres north. It's been a phenomenal success for us. We didn't buy any land at all. It was all permissive access, where we negotiated with one particular guy who's a brilliant Cork Philbin, negotiated along with Anna Connors all the lands off the farmers, and in lieu of allowing access across their lands, they got works like drains, ditches, fencing, gates, all that type of stuff. And it's closed officially with ads in the paper one day a year, so it doesn't become permanent right away for reassurance for the landowners. But it's on the old railway line from Westport to Achill, which has been closed for over half a century. It has 175,000 users annually, 90 plus local jobs to the economy, and it means 7.2 billion to us.